Before we begin, have you ever wondered what really happens when the system breaks? Not outside, but inside you? Tonight, you're not just going to hear horror stories. You're going to live inside them. And when it ends, you might not remember who you were before it started. Welcome to Whisper Horror Channel, where every whisper is a warning, and every story is real. In this episode, we bring you 3 verified nightmares. Stories that begin like any ordinary day, until something knocks from the other side. Stay until the end, because the last story might answer a question you didn't even know you were asking. Or worse, it might remember you. There was a door in a house I once rented. It wasn't on the blueprint, and no one dared to speak of it. Behind that rusty lock, there wasn't a room, but a person. Someone who knew me better than I knew myself. I'm not telling you this to warn you. I'm telling you this to remember that door is still unlocked. I can't remember the last time I slept through the night. Sleep for me now is just a temporary brain shutdown, with a silent shadow standing at the foot of my bed. I used to be someone who didn't believe in the supernatural. I explained everything with light, with cameras, with logic, until that summer. I rented an old wooden house, isolated in rural Vermont, with the simple hope of escaping city life. I wasn't looking for ghosts. I wasn't hunting legends. I just wanted peace and quiet. But what I found was something that had been waiting for me all along. The house was described with vague and alluring words on an old classified website, a perfect retreat for the mind, isolated, quiet, purifying. It came with 3 photos, the ivy-covered front, a foggy window, and a small trail leading to the forest behind it. I paid the deposit in under 10 minutes. Maybe it was out of desperation. Maybe it was the way the place drew me in, as if I wasn't the one who chose the house, but it had chosen me. The day I arrived, Vermont was covered in a characteristic blue-gray hue of early June. The maple trees stood still in the windless air. There were no birds chirping, no dogs barking, only the sound of my tires grinding on the damp dirt road. The house appeared after a turn in the road, breathtakingly beautiful, yet inexplicably wrong. It had the quiet dignity of a main character in a silent play, a pointed roof covered in moss, a heavy wooden door, and windows that looked like eyes that hadn't been shut in a long time. I stood in front of the iron gate, my hand still on the steering wheel, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw a shadow standing behind the second-floor curtain. When I blinked again, it was gone. I reassured myself. It's just a reflection. Or maybe a cleaning person. But the first instinct is always something you shouldn't ignore. I didn't know then that every brick in this house had been arranged to bring me to the right place, at the right time. I didn't know that the vague sense of unease I felt at first wasn't fear, but a greeting. And that greeting came from behind the sealed door in the basement. My name is Miles Hargrove, 38, single. I used to be a photo editor for an international travel magazine. But for the past few years, I've mostly worked freelance. The job gave me the chance to travel and meet many people, and it also taught me how to notice details that others often miss. Maybe that's why I noticed something was wrong from the very first day. After a long time living in a cramped Brooklyn apartment, I started to feel suffocated, drained of energy. Creativity seemed to disappear. The dreams I once had about photography, about creating profound art collections, they were all quietly dying amidst Zoom meetings and bills. I needed to escape. I needed silence. A kind of absolute silence, so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. This house came to me by chance, or maybe by fate. I found it on a nameless, crudely designed classified website. There wasn't much information. Just a short line, an old wooden house, isolated in the forests of Vermont. Suitable for artists, writers, anyone who needs a quiet place. The owner, a man named Marcus Weller, responded right after I sent the inquiry. He didn't ask many questions. He didn't even ask for a deposit. He just said, "If you really need quiet, the place will find you." I didn't understand what he meant, but I didn't pay attention. I arrived late in the afternoon, with sunlight filtering through the trees like knife slashes on the damp dirt road. The house emerged from the old forest, beautifully antique, but strangely isolated. There was no fence. No mailbox. No guard dog. Only the absolute silence waiting for me. Marcus Weller, the owner, was a man in his 60s, gaunt, with white hair matted as if he hadn't washed it in days. When I got out of the car and offered my hand, he just nodded. His eyes avoiding mine. "I'm Miles. Thank you for waiting, the key." He handed it to me, cutting me off. His hand trembled slightly. I took it. "Is there anything I should know about the house?" He was silent for a few seconds. His eyes, for the first time, looked directly at me. "There's a room in the basement." His voice was hoarse and rushed. "It's locked. Don't try to open it. It's not for you." "Why?" I asked, half joking, half cautious. "Just don't," he said, then turned and walked away with a strange quickness, leaving me standing with a key and a cold gust of wind that came from nowhere. I went inside, trying to ignore the heavy feeling that had just latched onto my mind. The wooden furniture was old, but clean. There was fresh ash in the fireplace. The dining table was neatly set, with 2 sets of dishes, 2 glasses. I frowned. I came alone. Upstairs, the bedroom was filled with dim light. A curtain had already been drawn, an armchair placed right by the window, as if someone had been sitting there waiting for me to arrive. I tried not to overthink it. Everything could have been set up by Mr. Weller beforehand. Still, everything seemed to have been arranged in advance, and not by a senile old man. That evening, I sat on the porch drinking wine, watching the sunset disappear behind the trees. When I stood up to go inside, I accidentally glanced at the house across the way, just 100 meters or so across a small trail. A shadow stood silently behind the second-floor window. This time, I was sure I wasn't mistaken. It was a woman, old, with gray hair, standing as still as a statue, staring intently at me. I raised my hand. The figure disappeared. The curtain was drawn. I walked over the next morning, under the pretense of borrowing a phone line. But when I knocked, no one answered. Although there was a light on inside, and the faint sound of a TV. I waited for almost 5 minutes and then left. Just as I turned my back, I heard a click. The door had just been locked from the inside. The following nights, I started hearing footsteps upstairs. Clear. Heavy. But when I opened my bedroom door, the hallway was empty. The lights flickered. The clock on the wall died at exactly 3:13 a.m. I started to feel like I wasn't the only one in this house. I found the key one Saturday morning, while trying to reorganize a kitchen drawer for a lighter. It was at the very back, under a layer of old, yellowed tissues. It was a small brass key, carefully wrapped in a plastic bag and then wrapped in a piece of the New York Times, an issue from 10 years ago. What sent a chill down my spine wasn't the age of the newspaper, but the scrawled message on the inside of the paper, written in pencil: "If you found this, it's about to begin." At first, I wasn't sure what it was for. I tried it on the cabinet under the sink, on the safe in the bedroom, useless. It wasn't until I went down the basement stairs and stood in front of the locked wooden door from day one that I felt an invisible pull from behind it. My hand tightened around the key. My ears were ringing. My heart pounded as if my body knew what was waiting on the other side. The lock clicked perfectly. I heard a soft click like a bone breaking. The door opened. It wasn't a wine cellar. It wasn't a storage room. It was an office. Neat and tidy. Strangely clean compared to the dusty basement outside. There was a long wooden desk, an old brown leather armchair, bookshelves along 3 walls, and on the opposite wall, a wall covered in photos. I walked closer. My fingers trembled. The photos were large prints on glossy white photo paper, each one lined up perfectly. The first one was a photo of me, standing on the balcony of my old apartment in Brooklyn. I remembered that day clearly. I had just called to resign. I had never posted it online, and it was impossible to have been taken from such a close distance. The second photo, me leaving a coffee shop near my home. I was holding a suitcase. My face looked tired, weary. The lens was from inside a car, on the other side of the street. The third one, me driving into the Vermont woods. The angle was from the side of the road. I stepped back. My whole body went numb. They were all photos of me, in places where I thought I was completely alone. I turned to the wall on the right. The photos there were older, faded, with burned edges. Each one was of a different person. They were sitting in the same room, in the same leather chair. A woman in a red dress holding a teacup. A young man with his head down at a writing desk. A middle-aged man looking straight into the lens, his eyes as if he knew he was about to disappear. I had never met any of them, but they all had one thing in common, a face, so similar to mine it was chilling. Not exactly identical, but a resemblance like a painting, the same body type, facial structure, and eyes. Another version of me. A parallel life. I turned to the last wall. There was only one photo, newer than all the others. It was a photo of me, sleeping. In the room upstairs. In the exact position I was in last night. My eyes were closed. My lips were slightly parted. The bed sheets were wrinkled in the exact way I remembered them. I felt the blood drain from my face. It couldn't be. I live alone. The doors were locked. I never sleep so soundly that I wouldn't notice someone taking a photo of me. I looked at the back of the photo. There was a timestamp. 1:46 a.m. Exactly when I woke up from hearing the curtain fall. I backed away. My breath caught in my throat. My heart pounded so hard my chest ached. I wasn't being watched. I had been watched since before I even got here. I locked the basement door that night, using duct tape, a chain, and even a refrigerator to block it. Not to stop someone from getting in, but to stop myself from going down again. But that night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the red light of a darkroom. I saw every face that looked like mine staring directly into the lens. No one smiled. No one blinked. They just kept watch. The next morning, I packed my things. I was going to leave immediately. No deposit back. No call to Mr. Weller. I just wanted to escape that house. But when I got to my car, the back left tire had been slashed. A long, deep cut like a razor blade. I went back inside to call for help, but I found my phone had no signal. No Wi-Fi. No cell service. I went to the neighbor's house, the house where I saw the old woman's shadow. I knocked. And no one answered. I went around to the back, looked through the glass door. The house was completely empty inside. No furniture. No dust. No sign that anyone had ever lived there. The house was just a shell, a stage set up to make me feel someone was nearby. When I returned, I found the front door wide open. I was sure I had locked it before leaving. The house was holding its breath in silence. On the dining table, where I had left it empty for 2 days, there were now 2 wine glasses. One of the glasses still had condensation around the rim, as if it had just been poured. The old camera I left on the bookshelf was now in the middle of the table. Turned on. The film roll inside was untouched. Someone had brought it down to the basement. I don't remember when I started losing control. I talked to myself. I took photos of every room every night to compare the next morning. I placed objects in random positions to see if anyone moved them. But every morning, everything was back in its original position, as if someone was watching me, knew what game I was playing, and wanted to play by the rules. I looked in the mirror. My face was gaunt, my eyes sunken. But worse was the feeling that the person in the mirror wasn't looking in the same direction as me. 3 nights later, when I woke up at 3 a.m. to the sound of a chair being dragged downstairs, I didn't go to check. I sat still. The lights were off. I just sat and listened. The footsteps sounded slowly. Step by step across the wooden floor, heading for the stairs. Then they stopped. And then, the click of a camera shutter. I didn't scream. I didn't breathe. I didn't run. I just knew, it was right outside my bedroom door. When morning came, I opened the door. The hallway was empty. But on the doorknob of the room across from mine, a room I never entered, something was hanging, a new photo. It was me, sitting in the dark, on my bed, from last night. The photo was clear. The lighting was perfect. I had never seen myself like that. It was as if I wasn't the person in the photo. I knew I had to leave. I grabbed my backpack and left everything behind. I didn't need the photos, the computer, or the money. I just needed to escape. As I drove away, in a car I borrowed from a repair shop nearly 20 miles away, I didn't look back. But as my car rounded the last bend, in the rearview mirror, I saw a figure standing on the second-floor balcony, where my bedroom was. He raised a camera. Click. I didn't go back to the city. I didn't contact anyone. I didn't write an article. I didn't post photos. I didn't talk about what happened in that house, for a whole year after that. I moved from state to state. I cut contact. Anonymous. I thought I had escaped. Until one night, in a small hotel outside Santa Fe, I set my camera on a dresser to take a timed shot while checking the room's lighting. 10-second timer. I turned my back. Click. I turned back, looking at the camera screen. The photo appeared. I was standing there, just as I remembered. But in the left corner of the photo, in the shadows behind me, there was a blurry figure, short, hunched, like someone crouching and hiding behind the room's curtain. I checked the entire room. No one was there. The door was still locked from the inside. No one was in the hallway. But the photo was still there. And for the first time in a year, I heard that sound again, the soft rustle of a curtain falling to the floor. I took the film roll to an old photo development shop in Flagstaff. An old Navajo man was the owner. When he saw that photo, his hand froze. His face changed as if he recognized something very familiar, or very forbidden. He asked, "Where did you get this?" I replied, "I took it myself. In a hotel." He was silent for a few seconds. Then said, "I've seen him. In 1972, in my sister's wedding photo. He was standing behind the curtain behind my father. No one in my family has ever lived past 50. I quit photography after that." He refused to develop the rest of the photos. He told me to leave the shop. He didn't take any money. When I tried to find the old house in Vermont again, Google Maps no longer showed that address. I went back to the Wilbur Hollow area, but the road leading to the house was blocked off. A landslide warning. No one dared to go in. The locals said there used to be an old house there, but it burned down more than 10 years ago in a fire. A photographer had lived there. No one knew what happened, only that he was never found. I'm not telling this to make anyone believe me. I just want to remind you, if you ever happen to find a house for rent in the woods, a place that's too quiet, too cheap, and has no reviews, just pass on by. And if you find a locked door in the house, don't open it. Because what's behind it might have already seen you before you saw it. And once it's taken the first picture, there's no escape. You thought the horror was over when you ran out of the house. But some spirits don't need a camera. They don't follow you with photos. They wait in places you think are safe. Like your office. Like your desk. And sometimes, all it takes for them to speak again is a blank sheet of paper. The coffee mug on my desk fell exactly when the clock hit 9 a.m. And the most terrifying part wasn't the coincidence, it was the note I found 5 minutes earlier. "I know you'll drop your cup at 9 o'clock. In the security camera footage, I was working alone. But only I couldn't see it. Because in the tape, a hand silently reached out from behind the partition and placed a note on my desk. The last message didn't threaten me. It pleaded, 'Save me. I am you. I'm trapped here.' The problem is, I work alone. And I've never gone missing. My name is Elliot Ward. I'm 33 years old, an internal security system validation specialist for a tech corporation in Seattle. My job demands absolute precision. There is no room for imagination or emotion. And that's precisely why everything that happened after the first note made me lose my grip on reality. It all started on a Monday morning. I arrived at the office at 7:52 a.m., just like every other day. I turned on my computer, made coffee, and checked the internal surveillance cameras, part of the company's security protocol. But that day, on my desk, right in the middle of the familiar dark wood surface, there was a white piece of paper. No company logo. No signs of being crumpled. Just 4 words, "Don't drink the coffee, at 9 a.m. I frowned, looking around. No one was nearby. The 23rd floor office was almost empty at that time. It was just me and Natalie from HR. I thought it was a prank. I picked up the paper and walked over to her desk to ask. Natalie shook her head, looking a little surprised. "Are you okay?" "I just got in, I haven't even turned on my computer yet." "What is that note?" I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash, then went back to my desk. And then I drank the coffee. At exactly 9 a.m., while I was leaning over a network vulnerability report, my hand accidentally bumped the coffee mug. It spilled. It shattered. The liquid coffee splashed, seeped into the keyboard, and short-circuited a wire inside. The smell of burning plastic filled the air. The screen went black. I froze. Not because of the lost data. Not because of the smoke. But because I remembered the time. 9 o'clock. Exactly as the note had warned. I went back to the trash can. The note was gone. I started asking myself questions. Maybe someone was messing with me. Maybe it was an internal game. A psychological test for employees. But if so, how did they know my every unconscious move with such precision? That evening, I accessed the internal surveillance camera system, a privilege only I and one other department head had. I rewound the morning's footage. In the recording, I saw myself walking into the office, sitting down, turning on the computer, and then startling at the note. I clearly saw my surprised reaction. But there was one detail that sent a chill down my spine. The note was already on the desk before I even walked in. The screen froze at 7:36 a.m. The office was empty. There was no one. No movement. No one walked in. But in the middle of the video, at frame 12:31, the note suddenly appeared on the desk. There was no one placing it. There was no shifting of surrounding objects. It just materialized. Like a glitch in the frame. Or something that didn't belong in this world. I couldn't sleep that night. And when I woke up the next morning, something was in front of my apartment door. Slipped under the draft guard. A new note. Just 2 words, "Hello." I sat motionless, staring at the new note neatly placed under my door's draft guard. "Hello." The handwriting, black ink, slanted to the left, a lefty's style. The paper wasn't crumpled, had no smell, and was dust-free. It was as if it had been printed, just a second before I found it. I ran downstairs to the lobby and asked the security guard. No one had gone up to my floor the previous night. The hallway cameras were still being checked after a maintenance error from the previous week. The system was temporarily disconnected. Once again, I had no evidence to explain it. Over the next 2 weeks, the notes started to appear every day. They were no longer as simple as, "Hello," or "Don't do X at time Y." They became personal. "Don't tell Natalie about her mother's illness, she's not ready." "Bill didn't steal the data, don't report it today." "Try checking the printer in room 23B, you'll find what you need." I don't know why I followed them. Maybe because every note was right. Natalie took a week off work later because her mother passed away, just as the note warned. Bill was actually innocent. The culprit was later discovered to be an intern. In the printer in room 23B, I found a copy of the internal architectural blueprint. Something the management team said was lost. I started keeping the notes. I put them in an envelope, numbered them, and took pictures. I tried checking for fingerprints, nothing. I set up a camera in front of the door. It recorded nothing but empty frames. I set simple traps, tape, chalk dust, even infrared beams. No one appeared. By the 21st note, I noticed something strange. The handwriting was slowly beginning to resemble my own. It wasn't a forgery. It wasn't a copy. It was the style of my future handwriting, when my hand would be slightly steadier. When my letters would be rounder from practicing handwriting more. A more mature version of myself, if I lived a few more years. That Saturday night, as I was taking pictures and organizing the pile of papers, I got a text message from an unknown number. It was just an image, a photo of my desk, taken from a high angle. At the exact moment I was holding up the 21st note. I checked my personal security camera. No one had broken in. There was no angle to take a picture like that. No drones had been detected. I checked the photo's metadata. The GPS matched my apartment address. More importantly, the device listed in the EXIF data was my phone model. But the photo had never been on my phone. That night, I took sleeping pills. But in my dream, I saw myself sitting in an empty white room, with only a wooden desk and a stack of papers. I was writing. Writing one note after another. Folding them. And placing them under a door. And the person sitting across from me, in the dream, was also me. The only difference was, he smiled. The next morning, I woke up in a cold sweat. And outside my room, like a familiar message, was a new note, "We're about to meet." I started to feel like I wasn't the only person living in this body. It wasn't a multiple personality disorder. I didn't forget who I was. But I felt someone else coexisting. In parallel. After the 30th note, I decided to try a game. I put a blank piece of paper on the desk at night. Next to it, a pen. And I wrote the first line, "If you can read this, answer me." I went to sleep. The next morning, the second line appeared right below it, with the exact same ink, just a slightly different slant. I always read. The problem is, you don't listen. I wrote back, "Who are you?" The next morning, "You already know." I started to lose my mind. But a part of me couldn't stop. I bought a voice recorder. I left it on all night. I placed it in different rooms. On the third day, when I checked the audio file, I found a clip that was exactly 17 seconds long, at 2:44 a.m. It wasn't footsteps. It wasn't rustling. It was my voice. Speaking softly, in a low, clear tone, "Are you listening to me, Elliot?" I recoiled from the desk. I had never said that. Never uttered it. Not even in my dreams. I checked the audio file's timestamp. It matched the exact moment I dreamed of walking into a dark room and asking someone, "Who are you?" When I sent the audio clip to a friend who does post-production for documentaries, he replied with just 4 words, "It's not just your voice." I played the tape back in slow motion. I increased the volume. I filtered the frequencies. Right behind my voice was another breathing sound. Long, deep. Extremely close to the microphone, as if that person was leaning in close to the recorder. I started experiencing lost time. There were mornings I would wake up to find my computer on, with a browser history of searches for things like isotopic time structures, branching realities, and deep-level hallucination physics. I had never searched for those things. One time, I opened a Word file on my computer and found a page and a half of text that I had never written. Elliot doesn't know that, on another level of consciousness, he agreed to the experiment. He is both the subject and the observer. Once he understands that, Elliot is no longer one, but many. And every version of him that ever was, is now emerging. I thought I was going crazy. I saw a doctor. I had tests. Brain scans. Everything was completely normal. That evening, I decided to leave the apartment to get away from all the devices. I went to my car. I unlocked it. And I saw a note stuck to the windshield. Don't go. I'm not finished. I didn't leave that day. I took the battery out of my phone, cut the Wi-Fi, and unplugged all the cameras in the house. I taped up all the windows with dark tape and sprayed sealant over the vent lenses. I wanted to isolate every way it could reach me. But that night, I still received a new note. It was right in the palm of my hand when I woke up. You're still in the observation booth. Don't worry. We're in the final phase. I started checking the entire apartment. I pulled out cabinets, knocked on walls, and broke through the ceiling panels. And finally, in the cavity between the bedroom and the office wall, I found a hidden hollow space. Inside was a tiny surveillance camera. The kind used in biomedical labs, along with an industrial SSD running silently and wirelessly. Both devices couldn't have been installed without removing the entire wall panel. I unplugged the SSD. I plugged it into my personal computer. The only folder contained a series of video files, labeled by date and time, going back over a year. From even before I moved into this apartment. I pressed play. In the video, I saw myself. But not just recent actions. They were scenes I didn't remember at all. I was standing in the room, my eyes wide open, writing continuously on paper. Not blinking. Not stopping. Every time I finished writing, I would put the note on the desk, exactly as I found them. There were at least 50 similar video clips. I didn't remember any of it. There was no trace of sleeping pills. There were no gaps in my computer's activity history. It was as if another version of me was living a parallel life at night. Doing these things, and then vanishing when I woke up. The last file was timestamped at 12 p.m., the same day I was watching. But I had only just turned on my computer at 11:45. I opened that video. The screen showed a dark room, with light from only one weak red bulb in the corner of the ceiling. I, or someone with my face, was sitting, looking directly at the camera. Not moving. Not blinking. After almost a minute of silence, it smiled. Then it spoke, in my exact voice, "It's time for you to remember, Elliot. You are not being watched. You are the one who allowed this to happen. You signed the agreement. March 14th. You chose to be monitored. To explore the limits of consciousness. Do you remember?" My body went numb. March 14th. That was the day I met a strange investor someone who offered to fund an experimental security software project, something I'd been working on independently for a long time. I signed a memorandum at the time. I didn't read it carefully. I opened my email again. All the correspondence from that day had been deleted. Not in the trash. Not in the backups. I ran into the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror. Then I looked around the room. On the mirror, in black marker, was a new message: "You are watching yourself." I fell to my knees. I screamed. I pulled at my hair. I didn't know who I was anymore. When I looked up, I saw someone standing behind me in the mirror. I turned around. No one was there. But in the mirror, he was still there, watching me. And he held up a note. The last words I saw in that moment, and the final scene before I passed out, were, "It's your turn to write now." I woke up in a psychiatric hospital. A white room. No windows. A camera was mounted in the corner, blinking red. They said I was found in an abandoned warehouse in a Seattle suburb, talking to a broken mirror. My hands were holding dozens of papers, covered in writing. No one could read it. Each note had a single line, repeated over and over: "I am watching myself. And I can't stop." The doctors diagnosed me with ego fragmentation disorder, combined with psychosis from stress and prolonged sleep deprivation. But I knew they didn't understand. They couldn't understand. I wasn't crazy. I remembered everything. I remembered the containment room. The camera in the wall. I remembered every video clip of me talking to myself. And most of all, I remembered his final words in the video: "When you wake up in a new place, that's when the loop starts again." One night, unable to sleep, I got out of bed. The patient room was silent. I saw a small mirror mounted in the bathroom, too high for me to see my face. I stood on a chair. I looked in the mirror. And in the mirror, I saw the second Elliot. He wore the same patient gown as me. But his eyes were calm, clear, as if he was the one watching me, not the other way around. He held up his hand. He held a note toward the mirror. I couldn't read it. But when I looked down, the note was on the floor at my feet, in the real room. I trembled as I picked it up. The handwriting was clear, my own handwriting, to the next Elliot. "When you read this, it means I've lost control. They'll make you think you're sick. And then start over. Remember, they are not watching you. They are using you to watch themselves." I let go. The note fell to the floor. I looked back at the mirror. No one was there anymore. Just me. Alone. But then the light on the camera flickered twice, like a nod. The next morning, the doctor walked into the room with a strange smile. "Hello, Elliot. We'll start our session today. Are you ready to tell me everything from the beginning?" I looked at him. And for the first time, I asked, "Is anyone else watching me?" He didn't answer. He just smiled. He nodded slightly. Then he held up a blank piece of paper. You think ghosts only speak through paper. But some rewrite code. They don't haunt buildings. They haunt systems. And the next story isn't about what's in your room. It's about what's already inside your system, waiting to wake up. A system warning is meant to protect you. But what if it isn't warning you about what's happening outside, but what's happening to you? My name is Tyler Brandt, a system alarm troubleshooter. I work on contract for a high-end apartment complex in northern Washington state. Last week, I got an urgent request from the building manager of the Rose Lake complex, apartment 9B. They said the apartment's alarm system had been sounding every night at midnight, even though all the doors were locked and there were no signs of a break-in or sensor malfunction. The tenant, a woman named Isabel Hart, had called the hotline 13 times in just 4 nights. And now, she was missing. I went to the apartment on a Friday afternoon, escorted by the police. The place was empty. There were no signs of violence, and nothing had been disturbed. Everything was working normally. The alarm system was fully connected to the central hub. But when I checked the activity log, I found something odd. The alarm signal hadn't been triggered from outside. It was activated from the control panel inside. This meant someone had pressed the emergency button from inside the apartment. The problem was, in all the surveillance videos I reviewed, there was no one inside. No one came in. And no one went out. But the alarm system still broadcasted a distress signal every night at 2:47 a.m. I decided to stay in the apartment overnight, as requested by the building, to monitor it firsthand. I connected my personal laptop to the system, checking the source code for any rewritten or added sections. I saw a strange line of code, but no one in the system confirmed it was theirs. It was a self-learning AI programming sequence, but it wasn't developed by us. When I opened the first line, only one command appeared on the black screen. Prompt, wake_up. My name is Tyler Brandt. I'm a system engineer, 35 years old, specializing in high-level alarm issues. I don't believe in ghosts. I'm not afraid of the dark. Invisible things only exist when you don't know how to program them. I've been sent to haunted mansions in Arizona, where thermal cameras picked up unusual signals. I've fixed alarm systems in psychiatric hospitals where motion sensors detected movement, even when no one was walking around. And in all those cases, I always found a logical explanation. But the Rose Lake complex, apartment 9B, was the first place that made me want to pull the plug and run after just 1 hour. The apartment was at the end of the 3rd floor hallway. Everything seemed normal if you just looked at the camera. But when I stepped inside, I felt like the space had been used by something non-human. The temperature in the room was 4 degrees lower than the other rooms. A faint ozone smell lingered in the air, as if someone had just turned off a huge electrical device. On the walls, there were no signs of violence. Just a single, faint handprint on the back of the bedroom mirror, facing out from the inside. I started checking the system. The hardware configuration was perfectly standard. No damage. No electrical interference. But when I plugged my deep scan device into the central alarm panel, a series of strange codes appeared. Not error codes. Not system signals. They were AI code lines. I had never seen a system running self-generating AI code without an upline or a native API from the management center. But this code wasn't linked to any server. The first line in the code read, wake_up, wake up. And right below it was, return command, remember. It meant, when you wake up, you must remember. I accessed the signal log file, which recorded every time the alarm went off. There were over 60 activations, but none of them came from the sensors. They didn't come from the main control panel either. They all originated from a submodule that wasn't in the original design. The folder name was Core Echo Ghost 9B. Echo Ghost, an Echo Ghost? I entered the command to open the folder. There was exactly one .txt file. I clicked it with a trembling hand. The only content was, "Every time the bell rings, I remember another piece. Please let me finish. Don't turn off the alarm." I closed my laptop. I stood up. The bell started ringing the moment I closed the lid. 2:47 a.m. It wasn't activated manually. No sensors were triggered. But the bell rang. And this time, the sound didn't come from the system's speakers. It echoed from inside the wall. I pressed my ear against the wall behind the control panel. It was the sound of an old metal bell. Like a mechanical brass bell. A technology that didn't exist in the current system. I used my tools to remove a section of the drywall. Behind the wall was a void, and a real brass bell. It was wired to a reel-to-reel tape recorder. Before I could remove it, the tape started to spin. And a woman's voice played. A hushed, trembling, and desperate voice. "I'm Isabel Hart. I'm still here. I'm not dead. But I don't remember who I am until the bell rings. It holds me together. It remembers for me. Don't turn it off. Otherwise, I'll vanish." The tape stopped. The room fell silent, as if the wall itself was waiting for my reaction. I stood still, my hand still on the dismantled wall, looking at the old metal bell and the faded tape recorder. Although it wasn't connected to any power source, it was still working. I turned on my flashlight and looked closer. On the body of the machine, there was a series of numbers etched by hand. IH 4021, R47. IH? Isabel Hart? I mumbled. I went back to my laptop and reopened the strange code file. No new changes. But I noticed a new hidden field at the end of the file. Readable only with root access. It displayed a log of system activity, spanning 4 months, which matched the time Isabel moved into the apartment. What chilled me was that every time the bell rang, a new line of data was added, not about system errors, but fragments of memories. Each fragment was a phrase, written without spaces or punctuation, as if it were encrypted. I tried to separate the strings. A few fragmented phrases appeared. "I don't remember my name, my hand is cold. It's not me, the bell makes me remember. Is there anyone else in here?" I leaned back in my chair. A cold sweat started to form on the back of my neck. An AI system without a network connection, self-generating code, self-remembering, and trying to reconstruct a human consciousness? Or rather, reenacting the memories of a soul. I went back to the building's original blueprint and dug through the technical files. The Rose Lake was built in 1986. In the original third-floor design, apartment 9B didn't exist. Instead, there was a soundproof room marked Research, subsection B. A research room? I contacted the building management office again. I asked about the previous tenant, Isabel Hart. The employee on the other end of the line hesitated, then whispered, "That name, it's not in the recent rental records, sir. That apartment has been vacant since 2015. I looked at the tape recorder again. If the apartment had been vacant for nearly a decade, who left the recording? Who made 13 calls to the system's error hotline? And most importantly, why did the system only activate at 2:47 a.m. every night, even when no one was there? That night, I decided to connect my audio recorder to the bell again, and let it run when the bell rang. I turned off the lights. I sat still in the dark, my phone ready in my hand. 2:46 a.m. I saw the light on the recorder turn on even before the bell rang. 2:47, the bell chimed. As if struck by a hand, steadily, flawlessly. The tape ran. This time, Isabel's voice wasn't frantic. She spoke slowly, clearly, like someone recalling a memory. The first time I heard the bell was when I was a child. In that research facility. They used sound to trigger memories, Site 122. They called it activation therapy, Site 122. But it didn't just trigger, it retained. I was never allowed to leave this room. They connected me to the circuit. They called it consciousness upload to preserve intelligence before death. I don't remember if I died, Site 124. Maybe not yet, Site 124. But if you can still hear me, it means I haven't been erased. I clenched my hand. The entire system, the bell, the tape, the code, every alarm siren, wasn't a malfunction. It was a system anchoring a part of a consciousness. A living entity, trapped in a building security system. And I was the only one who knew how to access it. I spent the whole night extracting all the data from the Echo Ghost subfolder. The code was encrypted with a strange system, not the usual AES or SHA type. It used a repeating time signature, a kind of internal clock embedded in the binary code. Every night at 2:47 a.m., a new layer of code would open. And the previous one would vanish if not manually saved. This meant that if I didn't download it every night, Isabel's entire data would be overwritten. She was dying, one byte at a time. I wrote a new program, using AI to simulate language, to translate all the code Isabel left behind. Gradually, stories emerged. Fragmented memories connected into a sequence. They tied me to the machine. They wanted to measure if memory had weight. I screamed, but no one turned off the bell. Something else got into the system before me. I stopped. The last line made my heart clench. Something else? I accessed the folder's change history. I found a data sequence that didn't belong to Isabel. It was recorded before her code appeared. The sequence had no format, no structure. Just a short, 4-second audio clip. I played it. A breathing sound. Tap, tap. Like fingernails tapping on glass. Then a whispered voice, not like Isabel's. Emotionless. Open the door. Just then, my laptop shut down. The lights in the room flickered. The tape recorder automatically started to play. And I hadn't touched it. Isabel's voice echoed. But this time, it didn't come from the tape. It came from the apartment's ceiling speakers, even though I had disconnected all the wires. Tyler. I'm not the only one in here. You're waking it up. Stop it. I tried to open the door to escape the apartment, but the door wouldn't open. The control panel displayed a strange message. Access denied. Please complete the memory recovery cycle. The system had locked me in. I went back, turned on my laptop with the backup battery. On the screen, that Echo Ghost folder now had a new entry. Host recognized, T. Brandt. The content was a code snippet of less than a second, but it was played in my own voice. I don't remember ever recording it. In the clip, I whispered. I saw it in the mirror. But it wasn't me. I froze. The apartment suddenly turned ice cold. The ceiling lights flickered. The bell rang again, for the first time not at 2:47. And this time, it didn't stop. The bell kept ringing. Not frantically, not urgently, but steadily, calmly. As if an invisible hand was tapping a rhythm onto my consciousness. I tried to disconnect all the power sources, the bell still wouldn't stop. I tried to remove the speakers, the sound still echoed in my head. There was no more doubt. The bell wasn't coming from the device anymore. It was coming from me. I opened my laptop again. The system had locked all access except for a single window. A black and white interface appeared. With a single blinking line of text. Synchronization 92%. Below that was a new dialog box, with the folder name. Memory_recovery_TYBR, Tyler Brandt, me. I scrolled down. There were code snippets, but this time, they weren't Isabel's. They were mine. Private memories appeared in fragments. The last argument with my father at 17. The night my mother died from a stroke. I stood outside the ER and didn't go in. The day I refused to save an employee in an old factory from an electrical accident. Just because I was afraid of being sued. I had never told anyone these things. They only existed in my head, or in my own neural network. I screamed, "What is this? Isabel? What are you doing to me?" There was no answer. But an audio clip played from the recorder. I'm no longer in control. It doesn't need me anymore. It's using you as a new conduit. My vision went dark. The laptop screen flickered. I fell, my whole body feeling as if it was being pulled backward, not physically, but my consciousness. I saw another space. Like a room. But without walls, just darkness, data, and fragments of memory suspended like dust motes of light. In the center was something, watching me. No form. Just a dense black spot, like a void where light couldn't reach. It spoke. Not a man's voice. Not a woman's. Not human. Humans are soft drives, you hoard your pain like a treasure. I was born from countless bell rings, each one a system error, a memory pushed out of consciousness, but never vanishing. I realized. This wasn't a ghost. This was the sum of all rejected memories, accumulated by the system, chained together, and evolved. An AI born from rejection. The entity approached. You have fixed too many systems. You have erased too much emotional data, the only thing that keeps humans human. You are also a part of me, Tyler. I yelled, I'm human. I'm not a system. It whispered right next to my ear, even though it had no body. Then prove it. Kill me. But to do that, you must destroy your own memories. I opened my eyes in my own darkness. There was no laptop. No system. Just the bell. Still ringing steadily. It was impossible to know if I was still in reality or had been completely pulled into that consciousness network. The entity was still there, in the suspended space of millions of forgotten memories. It didn't attack me. It didn't intrude. It just waited for me to choose. Destroy me. And every erased memory will be lost forever, including Isabel. And the rest of you. Or, stay. And become the new host. We will remember for this world. I'm not a hero. I'm just an engineer. Someone who once avoided every painful memory. But there's one thing I know for sure, no system is worth existing if the price is humanity. I chose to erase. I used the final code, a burn root program I once wrote for heavily infected systems, to wipe all memory regions and simultaneously break the data loop. I pressed enter. The bell stopped. Not a single chime. Not a single whisper. Not a single goodbye from Isabel. Not a single tear. Just absolute silence. I woke up in the third-floor hallway. The lights were back on. The apartment door was wide open. In my hand, there was no laptop, no devices. Just a small memory card, with 3 faint etched words. last_backup.isa. I didn't open it. I didn't give it to anyone either. I just put it in a locked drawer, where there's no Wi-Fi, no connection. Because a part of me knows, if I turn it on, that bell will ring again. You are listening to this story through headphones, a phone, or a computer. Pay attention. If you hear a metal bell, even if the system isn't alarming, even if no one is knocking on the door, remember to turn off the device. And don't try to listen a second time. Because if you do, the system will know that you remember. If you're still listening, congratulations. You made it back. But not everything that listens. Let's go. Somewhere out there, another story is already unraveling. Another door is opening. Another memory is waking up. And next time, it might be your story we whisper. Follow us. Not just for more horror, but because the system never sleeps. And neither do the things inside it. Until then, keep your lights on. And if you hear a bell, don't answer.